You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
HRN is food radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org.
Whether you're a chef or just love going to restaurants, you know the best ingredients are everything. West Home is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. Learn more at westhome.com.
Welcome to Pizza Quest, a journey of self-discovery through pizza. I'm Peter Reinhardt. Today, our guest is Nashville's own Tandy Wilson, James Beard award-winning chef and founder and owner of City House in the Germantown section of Nashville. City House is nearing its 20th anniversary and from its inception was a catalyst in the Nashville restaurant renaissance. Tandy's culinary journey has included a long and winding path from classical French and Italian cuisine, working for world-famous and also crazy chefs in California, but like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, he long ago rediscovered that there's no place like home. But let's have Tandy tell us himself. Welcome, Tandy. I'm thrilled and honored to have you join us here on Pizza Quest.
Thanks for having me, Peter. I'm psyched to be here myself.
Cool. As I was telling you before we started recording, I have not yet been to City House. It's on my, bucket list. One of our producers and founders, Jeff Michael, has been there and just been raving about it. So we're pretty jazzed. But you've been around it. You're not the new kid on the block anymore. I mean,
no.
For those of us who have not been to Nashville, they may or may not know about you. But anyone who has been does know about you. And like I said, you're getting close to 20 years. It's about 18 years or so that City House has been open.
It'll be 17 in December. So we're coming right up on it. The years just fly by, to be honest with you.
Well, you kind of hit the ground running. You were nominated early on in the opening in the career of the restaurant for James Beard Awards, and after a number of kind of the usual ramp up of making the short list and then the finalist list, you won the award in, what was it, 2016?
16. Yes, that's right. That's right.
Congratulations on that. And then what happens? How does that work in the James Beard world? Do you then drop off the list since you won and you don't get renominated, or how do you?
Yeah. I think if you're up in that, really high echelon, you might be looking at chef of the year or restaurant of the year, things like that. But that seemed to be it for me there. Yeah. That was
now you're
just
having fun. It looks like to me, everything I know about, the restaurant is that you're still having fun doing it and you love really cooking is what you really love doing.
I was on the line last night. I still do it. I get in there and cook. And I think you find what you're good at with time and life. And I tried to open restaurants like many of my peers have, to have like another restaurant here. I'm not that person. I learned quickly. I'm not I have methods and procedures, but they're not like things that I put on a computer and type out. I'm not organized well in that way. I'm a hands-on leader and I'm a hands-on chef. And that's, it's nice to know what you're good at, is what I like to say.
Well, I imagine that your staff and your fellow line cooks and chefs and everyone love working with you as well, because it seems like some of you guys have been with you for a real long time.
Yeah. I think I really put an emphasis on balance of life and restaurant work, because restaurant work can be so heavy, and you need to have a place outside of it to feel comfortable and kind of let go of that. So I think in that I try to really create a good job, an enjoyable job, and I think people stay around for that.
Well, of course, I want to talk about pizzas with you in a little bit, but you do a lot more than pizza, at City House, and so we'll talk about the whole menu. But didn't you also, or did you open a Roman style place? What was it called? Calo Rosso or something?
Yeah, Colo Rosso, which means redneck in Italian.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that still happening?
No, that's not. I tried it on a college campus, and I think that was a pretty bad idea for me. a lot like we do a lot of other things, and a lot, like you said, a lot of what I'm rooted in is agriculture and local farms and in particular produce. So I cook with a lot of vegetables, and they really like are really highlighted just naturally by the way I like to cook. And that doesn't really meet what your average college freshman and sophomore are into. We had a lot of requests for buffalo chicken, and it just didn't work out.
Right. That sounds like a concept that would work, with the people that already know your food. But
that's right.
But for the people who are still discovering, how to eat beyond the cafeteria, it's a big reach.
I think I was asking too much of the customer base for sure.
Well, you've had a really, interesting journey because, even though you've been around with this restaurant for 17 years, you were working for years leading up to opening City House. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because you got to work with some great chefs, great mentors along the way, and also some pretty crazy ones as well. And you've had pans thrown at you and things like that. So the story of the chef life, Can you talk a little bit about your journey and kind of bring us up to date? And then we'll talk more about, after that, a little bit about the menu of today.
Sure. I cooked through college and fell in love with it, and went to culinary school. And then I found myself in wine country in California, mostly in Napa. And it was wonderful. But yeah, I worked at Trevigny, which is now Charter Oak, and it was a wild ride. You
were working there when I lived out in that area. And
yes.
Were you working with Michael Chiarello, or was he already gone?
No, I met him, but it was Carmen Quagliata when I got there. And I stayed through two other chefs. And I truly fell in love with the food and the technique, and I learned so much along those lines. I also learned a lot of how not to treat people, you learn a lot from bad examples, and that happened there. But I also met people that I'm still in touch with to this day, that I talk to about food and life and everything. In that same time, in Napa, I worked at Terra for Hero Zone.
It's one of my favorite restaurants of all time.
I would agree with that.
Hero, he's legendary out there.
He really is, and he took the concept of fine dining and almost made it feel like he put you in his house doing it. It's like you're there, and it was just an amazing place. I learned a lot of how to treat people there, and how to be a chef, and how to be accountable day in and day out, as Hero certainly was. And I fell in love with the food there too. I was cooking out of his cookbook for Sunday supper this week at the restaurant. So
really? Wow.
His cuisine is just phenomenal. Yeah.
It's been a while since I lived there. Do you know, is he still doing it? Is Terra still there?
No, Terra's gone and he's retired, but I know I saw him at the Beard Awards in 2017, and he and Lissa are traveling all over, and he's still doing cooking engagements probably all over the world. And I think they're having a really great time.
It's great. It's kind of like, he graduated, and and fortunately, it doesn't sound like he has a lot of healing to do. He's kind of enjoying life now.
I think so. I think he, one of the things that I'm sure he helped influence me to learn is when you get to that point in your journey, you need to know how to have fun. You can't be some serious chef, whatever type of professional, day in and day out, and think, okay, it's retirement day, and tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm just going to have a great time. You have to learn how to do that and practice it along the way as well.
Yeah. And I guess that anybody who has seen shows like The Bear, know that there are chefs that are wound real tight and can't quite let go. And there's others who are enjoying the journey while they're doing it. And it sounds like you've kind of found a way to do that, to enjoy it while you're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to do it for a while. I'm not done yet. So, I want to, and I think that's the only path to sustained success.
Well, can you talk about some of the other mentors? I mean, you were trained in classical French and then into classical Italian. I mean, you've got a background in all these classical styles before you kind of found your own culinary voice.
Yeah. I would credit Margot McCormick right here in Nashville with helping me find my voice. And when I moved home, I knew I wanted to be here, but Margot in East Nashville was doing her thing and was really like the shining light. Deb Paquette at Zola was also doing great things. But I worked with my dad in food sales for a while, just waiting for a job to work with Margot. And when I got there, it was everything I loved about California brought to Nashville. We rotated the menu daily. We worked with farmers. We did all of that great stuff. And she, after we got to know each other, had enough confidence in me as a sous chef for her to be like, I'm going to be out of town next week. This is how you do it. And and every day it's like, here's a blank legal pad. What's the menu today? And she really, really taught me lessons along the way in that. She didn't just say, here it is, I'm never going to read it, I hope it goes well. She was around, she was checking out the menu, she was tasting stuff and guiding me all along the way.
She sounds a little bit like the Alice Waters of Nashville.
Yeah, a little bit. And Margot's just wonderful. She's still there for me, like every day if I need her. Now our kids go to school together at this point, so our relationships have really changed a lot. But just I don't know that I would have found that voice if it wasn't for her.
So what would you say, like, were the main takeaways from that particular experience in terms of how to treat people, how to manage the day to day?
Yeah, I really didn't even know that I wanted to be a chef and own a restaurant before Margot. So I think that was the biggest thing I learned from her. I watched the way that she took it. She treated people with kindness, but expected a professional attitude. And did it her way. And I saw that going down and I'm like, wow, it's like just making those decisions on your own, doing it exactly how you want it. I think I can do this. That was like really a huge thing that I learned from her, was that maybe I do want to be in the restaurant business for myself.
Where are some other places that you worked even before that, where you were really, when you were really young and being trained?
Yeah. In Knoxville, when I was in college, I worked at the Orangery for probably 2 years, and another restaurant that was kind of it wasn't there super long, but it was called the Jockey Club, and all of that was like very, very French. And I had a great chef there, Kevin Foltz, and basically when I got to culinary school, I had already been all the way through the textbook, and that was because of Kevin. And
on cooking, right? It was
on cooking, and
like
I'd
Lubensky.
Yeah, I was like, do I need to buy one because I already have one? And then he had me. We were reading Larousse and cooking out of Larousse as well, and just doing stuff that I think you find a chef that can connect with a cook, and you get projects and you get books to read, and he and I really had that connection, and he knew how to say, when I was about your skill level, your age, this is what I wish I was reading, and I'm actually doing that with one of my cooks right now, and I learned that from Kevin. Not what I was reading at that time, but what I should have been reading, what I wish I was reading at that time.
Yeah. And it's hard to find the young up and coming, wannabe chefs who are willing to pay that price to do that kind of reading and research. It seems like it's almost like a lost art.
It's not every cook. But I also think there's so many bright spots in this young generation as well. So they're not out there. But but I've had a few lately which have really encouraged me on it. And, I'm a big fan of the young generation of cooks coming up. I think they're awesome. I think they get a hard time too much.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Well, and you must be getting some good ones coming through there then too. What happens? How does somebody who wants to learn from you, come to work for you?
Just come to work. If we're hiring, I hope you're the first one through the door.
Yeah.
But I look for people who want to learn, who are hungry and can be humble about it, and who want to get in there and do the job. And that's great. And that's the main thing. Do you have the desire to do it? After that, my food is simple. So I think of my kitchen as a great place for people to not necessarily get started, but to get started really learning. It's nice if they know how to handle tickets and be in a kitchen, have a little bit of experience when we get them, but I don't need a lot.
How would you define your style of food and cooking, or how have others described and defined it for you? Does it fall into a particular category?
I think it's Paul Bertoli's Cooking by Hand is, I hope I got the title right. It's one of my favorite cookbooks. And in it, he talks about how an Italian wouldn't come to Tennessee, and he doesn't use Tennessee as a reference, and order Mediterranean sea bass. You would cook trout. And that's what I cook at my restaurant. I think what I cook is kind of like California Italian, applying that theory to Nashville. So I still cook the food my mom cooked for me growing up in the restaurant. I still cook cornbread and grits, but we also make arrabbiata, and we also cure guanciale, and what I mean? So it's like, it's a nice mashup of everything I learned. I think that's it. And then what we're learning still.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that you love working with produce and vegetables. So do you have particular farmers that that you've nurtured or are using on a regular basis, or relationships basically with the growers?
Absolutely. And really that's here in Nashville. That's a lineage like the chefs. It started with Eaton's Creek Organics and Turnbull Creek Farms, and they were really like, but both Tanacoma and Tallahassee May were like farmers that taught me so much about what was going on. And they have both since retired, and it's kind of, we keep moving down through. So, and every farm is great. So we work a lot with Rocky Glade right now and Bell's Bend, but like those two farms that, I know those names probably don't mean a lot to people that don't live around here, but we get their list. They just came through by text right before this Zoom, and we see what we need for that week, and we order. And so we go direct with the farms, and we work with probably 3 other vegetable farms, and then we work with pork and beef, but everything is like right here. So when you're able to talk to the farmer, they can really tell you what's going on. Like, hey, it rained a lot in July, and the watermelons all blew up really big. So they look nice, but they're full of water, and they're mealy in the middle, and they don't taste great, So
don't buy them. Yeah.
Right. And if you don't know a farmer, you don't know that.
Yeah. So
I think that's a huge thing. They can really teach you a lot about the product you're working with and life in general.
It's so much common sense as you describe it, and you'd think that people have always been doing it this way, but this notion of being able to work directly with the farmers and knowing who's growing it and how they're growing it, that wasn't always like that. When I was coming up, it was Alice Waters and a few people like that who kind of established the notion, even though it was happening regionally, that that's how she wanted to do her restaurant. And it started with the quality of the ingredients. And then it became a nationwide trend, of course.
Right. Absolutely.
And so everyone who's listening from different cities probably knows growers and knows of restaurants that work in a similar fashion to you. But it's in Europe, and maybe Italy especially, it's maybe been like that for a long time, in France. But it hasn't always been like that in the restaurant world here in the United States.
It definitely hasn't. And it set up this really great little like economy of small family farms that can flourish off of small restaurants, and great relationships between the two.
Yeah. And I mean, do you still have it where like a farmer will just show up at your back door and say, "Hey, I've got bush beans today," or something like that?
Yes, that usually happens with fruit. It's usually like, hey, the blueberries hit, and I'm a sucker for that. It's hard enough to find local fruit, and it comes in. We have at the restaurant just the best pastry chef, Rebecca Tershin, and she's phenomenal. And I don't even have to ask her. I'm like, just go. I just buy the fruit. I know she wants it. Let's get it here.
Right.
Yeah.
If it works for you, it works for me. Well, let's talk about that. You said that you're still learning, and when you started 17 years ago, the menu probably looked a certain way. How has it evolved, and when did pizzas enter into the equation?
And pizzas were there day one, and I, like at Trevigny, I'd worked with pizza. We had pizza at Margot, but I had a different idea for how I wanted it to go. And I'm kind of notorious for not practicing things too much, but we had about 3 days of practice with the oven and the dough and everything. And then we went right to it. So I wanted pizza to be on the menu because we talk about it as this universal food.
Right.
And I truly believe it is. I did want to be able to serve things that might challenge guests a little bit as to like, what is that vegetable, or are we really going to eat pig's head tonight? Right. But right. I also wanted to have a simple pizza that would make everyone feel welcome, and not feel like they had to do that to say, yes, I'd like a margarita pizza, or I'd like our belly ham pizza is like 3 ingredients. I'd like to have that, please. And they can relate to it, enjoy it, and love it, and not feel like these other things that we wanted to try as culinarians were too advanced for them, maybe.
But it sounds like you've got a clientele that's they trust you now, and they're
yes.
they'll say, "Do me, do something for me that I haven't seen before."
We have a lot of that, but people are all across the board, and there are nights where we have the people that are like, "I want it all," sitting at the same table as the person who wants that cheese pizza. And you know what? We got you both. We got it. Right. We can do that.
Well, I think pleasing your customers, feeding people is what gives you joy.
It truly is. I mean, it, and that comes from my family. That comes from my mom and both of my grandmothers. I've eaten a lot of home cooked meals in my life, and I still cook at home a lot because of that. And the joy around that was always really special. And I think that really set in with me. I think I noticed it. It set in and it stayed with me. It's not something that I brushed over and didn't really reconsider.
Whether you're a chef or just love going to restaurants, you know the best ingredients are everything, especially when it comes to beef. In Northern Australia, there's a different approach to raising high-quality beef. Westholme, based in Queensland and Northern Territory, is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. They steward 16 million acres of rangeland, guided by their natural ecosystem, and are led by a belief that if they balance the needs of their cattle with the needs of their environment, both can thrive. Their team of rangeland experts and nature managers use a variety of tools like satellites that assess grass health and on-the-ground research to monitor and respond to the welfare of the environment. These cows graze on native grasses like Mitchell grass, which is only found in Australia, along with dozens of other plants, herbs, and seasonal legumes. Cattle are happier when they have the freedom to forage and explore, so Westholme ensures they can roam wild, foraging at will for the first 2 to 3 years of their lives. The result is high-quality Wagyu beef that reflects the terroir of Northern Australia and a flavor suited to complement any cuisine. Westholme believes that when nature leads, flavor follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
So going back to sort of the evolution of the menu, so what are some things that you learned along the way that have added and continue to kind of become new, to your customers?
Yeah, I think along the way, some of the things would be like our sour corn cake. We ferment cornmeal for a couple of days, a little bit of buttermilk, and then I really tried to combine traditions with this. It's an unleavened corn cake, so it's meant to be a little bit like farinata in Italy, and it's just a soaked cornmeal that has a little bit of ferment to it with olive oil, buttermilk, a little more water and salt, so it cooks thin, almost like a crepe. And that pops up all over our menu pretty regularly. It's on there right now with some field peas from the summer, a little bit of salsa crudo, tomatoes, and basil, and bacon sofrito. So it's kind of like you get into a dish like that, and I kind of wrap up a lot of a lot of my Southern heritage and Italian food all in one. So things like that have come.
It almost sounds like a national version of Ethiopian injera bread or something like that.
Yes, and I think every cuisine, people have identified it with it more than Southern. One of our new sous chef has spent years in Indian cuisine. And they're like, hey, this is just like Indian food. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, all food's like Indian food, like Italian food, like whatever. It's you get in there and you start digging around, and we're all pretty similar.
Exactly. Everything's derived from somewhere else, and
from somewhere else. Yeah. Everything began somewhere and then slowly leaked together until we have global cuisines.
Well, let me ask you about this corn batter that you're making.
Yeah.
Is it a natural, when you say fermented, is it a natural starter that you keep going, or is it yeast, or how do you ferment it?
We use cultured buttermilk, Cruise Dairy buttermilk. They're right outside on. Yeah.
So the buttermilk is still alive. It still has that.
Yes.
I see.
Yeah. This buttermilk is like thicker than cream. It's cultured and churned, and it is dynamite. So for say 4 quarts of meal and 4 quarts of water, it's like a cup of buttermilk, 2 days at about 70 degrees, and it's delicious.
Wow, it sounds like fun. I'm already thinking in my head when I run out of here today, I'm going into my kitchen and trying to put some of that together. So that's one example of something that sort of evolved into your menu. Can you give me a couple of others?
Sure, absolutely. I think another big one was butchery. And I'd done a little bit of whole animal stuff at Trevigny, but not a whole lot. And when we started, we were getting different pieces and parts and putting the menu together. And now we do a half hog every week or every other week. And I wasn't expecting to get into a program like that, but it really just sat in and fit for us, where the hardest thing to figure out what to do with was the loin. And I was like, well, I think we can handle that.
Right. So it's kind of like now you're doing snout to tail kind of butchery.
Yeah, it feels a lot like that. I mean, we get a liver and we get a head every once in a while, but we get a liver with a half hog, and the shoulder mostly becomes sausage. We run it. I love sausage. We've had a case sausage on the menu, I would say like 90% of the time since we opened. And the shoulder meat's just perfect for that. The belly ham pizza that I mentioned earlier is like, that's our, that's what I say keeps the lights on. And it's a prosciutto cotto style of belly. So it gets cured in a wet brine and then roasted just to set it. And then we slice it and let that fat melt onto the pizza as it cooks. So all our bellies go to that. And then the ham, we will use a little of that meat for sausage, but a lot of our ham just becomes meatballs. We sell a lot of meatballs on Sunday nights. And then, anything that's cooked that night, we then cool if we didn't use it, and we sell those on pizzas throughout the week. So we might have add meatballs, for
meatballs are getting. It's one of those things that circles back every now and then and becomes big again, you know?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about your
This will be my third trip on that, I think.
Yeah, because they're back. You know, it's like you could do a whole show on like meatballs are back because everybody's doing them now. Do you do all pork meatballs, or do you blend other meat?
We do all pork. Which at first I was like, oh no, and we were getting beef and to mix in, and I was like, this is just making more than we need. And so I was like, okay, we're just going to try all pork meatballs, and they're phenomenal. I mean, they just, you know, they're delicate and they're delicious, and I love them. You know, I'm a little partial to pork.
Do you serve them with a red sauce, or how do you serve them?
Yeah, we make the meatballs, pretty simple recipe: salt, pepper, garlic, salt. We bake the pizza dough and then crumble it into a fresh breadcrumb with milk, and that's everything in there. And then we roast those in the oven, and then we put them in a basic tomato sauce where they cook for 5 hours, and then we do spaghetti and meatballs on Sunday night. Yeah,
only Sundays, huh?
Only Sundays. Yeah. I mean, here and there it might pop up every once in a while, but it really helps. Sunday nights are a great night for us. It's a popular night at the restaurant, but I think the spaghetti and meatballs just kind of help put that stamp on saying, hey, it's Sunday night.
Yeah, I gotcha. It's kind of like Prince Spaghetti Day or something like that.
That's right.
So that's kind of because that gives the locals, you know, something to build their week around. Is hey, when we're going for spaghetti on Sunday night.
I mean, our Sunday night guests, I see them and they're like, "Oh, we just love Sunday," and I'm like, "Perfect."
That's awesome. Well, back to the pizza. So I know when I come that I have to get the pork belly pizza. That sounds like a signature item. That's always on the menu, right? Yeah. So what are some other ones that are either perennials or just rotate in every now and then?
Yeah. I got one that rotates in, and this is a different one, but we do a, it could be in the summer, it's tomato. And then as we start moving into fall, pretty soon here, it'll turn into broccoli for us, usually mixed with some greens. But I make it's a cheesy mayonnaise, and it's a mayonnaise with a lot of Parmesan, lemon juice, black pepper, raw garlic, all mixed together, and that goes smeared down on the pizza, and then sliced tomatoes, Parmesan. We bake the pie, and we finish it with a little bit of chili oil. And we do the same thing with raw broccoli or broccoli greens on top of it. Sometimes a little bit of boiled potato on that one. But the cheesy mayonnaise pizza tends to cycle through in the season with
Sounds pretty amazing. Yeah,
it's really good, and it's a thin layer. When I was a kid, my mom would make this thing where she'd stack just like sandwich bread with mayonnaise and tomato and cheese and bake it like in a casserole in the oven. And we might have it with like, say, chili. Right. Yeah, and I just loved it. And I kept thinking about the mayonnaise in there, and I was like, we just got to try this. We got to do something here, try it on a pizza. And it's phenomenal.
It's funny how these taste memories from our childhood can now reemerge as something new and exciting for in a new application.
Absolutely, I think as the chefs, like as the people cooking the food, like the first most important thing is that we're excited about it, and finding that balance between what your guests like and what you're excited about. That's the sweet spot, And if you're hanging out there, you're going to have some good things going on.
Well, okay. This wouldn't be Pizza Quest without us being able to dive into your crust. So tell us a little bit about your crust.
Yeah. It changes. I feel like, you learn something from a friend and you try something new and you do something different. So, we work with a mill right in North Carolina. It is roller milled. It's not stone milled, but it is milled to order. And we do a mixture of mostly
Is that Carolina ground by any chance?
No, we work with Lindley Mills.
Oh, Lindley Mills. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. So they send it over, and we all stay strong carrying it in the back door. And and then, it's like, I'd say it's like at least 75% AP flour, just a touch of bread flour to bring the protein up. And then it's very simple, water about 80 degrees, I use active dry yeast. And then we use a little bit of old dough, all at the bottom, and then flour's on top, and we'll mix, and then we rest for about 30 minutes, and then salt goes in, and another quick mix, and then at that point we bulk rest overnight and let the whole thing develop overnight, and then day of, like early morning, pizza dough comes out. We do a 9-ounce dough ball and shape it, and then take it back and let it just start relaxing again for that night service.
So that 9-ounce dough ball makes about a 12-inch pizza?
About a 12-inch pizza.
Well, I'm very familiar with the Lindley Mills. They're one of my favorite, millers, and we're good friends. Do you ever play with their sprouted wheat?
Yes. I've put it in the pizza dough, and I really like that. We also used it in a couple of pastas. Honestly, I'm glad you said that, because I really got away from it, and I don't know why. We just kind of stopped with it, but I have played around with it in a few places. It hasn't had a permanent application.
But I could see it working great in pasta, though. It's conceptually, sprouted wheat flour feels to me like it should be, a big wave of the future. I felt like it's been coming for years, and Joe Lindley at Lindley Mills is one of the pioneers of perfecting the method for doing it, and there are other places doing it now as well. And I'd love to see more chefs like you, work with that ingredient in your products.
I need to get back to it. And honestly, I would think that it would be really, really blowing up right now with, some of the digestion issues with flour. I think that these things are just like really the way we need to go. Yeah.
Well, okay. One more pizza question, and then before we run out of time. So your dough is pretty. It's typical. Sounds like a kind of your variation of a Neapolitan style dough. You've got a pre-ferment in there. It's yeasted, but is it mostly white flour?
Mostly white flour. Yeah. I wouldn't dare tell them Italian that, but probably.
No, they wouldn't. We couldn't call it Neapolitan, but Neapolitan. The big phrase these days is Neapolitan-ish. But
yeah.
And then the pizza's baked in a wood-fired oven.
Yes, it's a Dough Pro, which is now Earthstone, I think.
Earthstone, yeah.
Yeah, and I got a rectangular oven. I don't know if you've ever been to a Vec in Chicago, but it's pretty much the same oven. So it's a weird cooking situation. We kind of have literally 3 pizzas about 3 inches from the fire, and that's all we can cook at once. Yeah. So. It makes them go pretty quick, though, and I really like the product the way it turns out.
And you got to have a couple people who are just totally dedicated to keeping their eye on the pizzas, because I'm guessing that's a big menu item for you.
It is. We kind of run a shared system on the hot side. It's like we have a dedicated oven cook who kind of roasts the meat and vegetables in the wood oven, and then we have a pizza pasta cook who really shapes and fires all the pizzas. And then someone like myself working Expo really handles most of the turning and cutting and selling of the pizza.
Yeah. It's amazing. When we talked to Alice Waters for my very first pizza book, 20 years ago. And, she was kind of one of the people, along with Wolfgang Puck, who kind of elevated pizza from, the pizzeria concept to fine dining, and started a whole wave of artisan pizza. And she said the biggest problem she had was finding somebody who was willing to work the pizza station at Chez Panisse. Everyone wanted to work on the fancy food. She couldn't find anybody to just take on the pizza oven. And so every once in a while she'd find somebody and try to hold on to them as long as possible until by working that, they would then open their own restaurant.
Yeah. I bet. Yeah. You find somebody and they're just in it at that point. You find that pizza cook and it's hard to get them away from it too.
And that's it. And so that's how times have changed, because back then she was having a hard time finding people to work pizza. Now everybody wants to make.
Yeah. A neat thing about Chez Panisse, I love Chez Panisse and I love the cafe. And when I lived out there, I went as much as I could. Right. And we sell a lot of eggs on pizzas. You can get a farm egg on your pizza. we'll add it to any pizza, and everybody's like, "Oh, it's so Italian." And I was like, I've been to Italy a lot, and I never saw an egg on a pizza there. I learned this at Chez Panisse.
Right. Do you ever make stinging nettle pizza at?
No, but we need to.
That's all. When I had that for the first time, I was afraid to eat it until I tasted it and I saw how good it was. And so you cook it, it doesn't sting anymore.
Yeah, you just got to blanch them.
Well, this has been really a lot of fun. Where do you? I know you said that you want to be in it for a lot longer. Where do you see it going? Do you see an evolution? And I'm sorry, before we run out of time, I did want to ask you about your pastry chef and your desserts. If you could talk a little bit about before we get back to that last question, talk a little bit about some of the dessert items.
Yeah, Rebecca makes these just wonderful icebox cakes. One of them is called the waltz cake, and it's just got pecans and layers of cream and cake. And she does this with all of her cakes. They're just phenomenal. Lots of times we have a pie on the menu. We always have a cookie plate and a panna cotta. She knows balance of flavor in the pastry field as well as anyone I have ever been around or seen work. She also knows perfection of basic technique and then applies that to beautiful, simple flavors. And it's just like a combination that's meant to be. She's been at City House for 15 years now, 15 of our 17 years.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
You can hold on to her for as long as you've had her.
Her name is synonymous with the restaurant as mine.
Wow. Well, that's congratulations to you and to her. It sounds like her style. It reminds me of remember Emily Lucchetti, who was a famous pastry chef in San Francisco worked for Jeremiah Tower. Yeah. And her style was that, kind of, it's not this Frenchified desserts, but it's real classic, fundamental, homey desserts, I guess you could say, that people.
I think, yes, absolutely. I think that's very, very right.
Well, cool. Well, can't wait again to come in to try the full array of menu. So back to the earlier question: is where do you see it going from here? More of the same?
I think, more of the same. I don't know that. I want another restaurant ever. And I don't know that I have any desires to slow down with City House. I do one day want to dip my toe in the agricultural side of things, not in a way to grow food for the masses, but to be able to kind of show people the whole process and kind of take them in and say we're growing figs. And bring people out and harvest figs, and then take that through a full meal with them, so they can see that kind of experience and do some of that. That is a desire for my future for sure. But at the same time, I think I see myself just continuing at City House for quite some time.
Do you have growers that you can say, listen, I have a feeling I want to work with a particular flavor or ingredient that I'd love for you to grow me such and such, where they'll grow on commission, so to speak, and I'll buy everything you can grow in that particular style. Do you do any of that?
Lots of that. And they don't even make us. I used to say, hey, I'll pay for the seed and whatever cost you want to bring me whatever you get from the harvest on certain items. And they'd be like, no, we'll grow it. We don't care. That's cool. So people are very open to that here, and the idea of doing things. But we also do a lot of stuff like some fennel got left in the ground intentionally at Bell's Bend, and they know I want fennel seeds. And so last week I got a text over, and they're like, "Are these what you want for fennel seeds?" And I'm, the yellow flowers are still a little bit on. I'm like, all the flowers are going to be dropped, and it's going to be these green, juicy seeds. And that's exactly what I'm looking for. And they're like, okay, give us 2 weeks.
Wow.
So we do a lot of that work as well. I try to stop by the farms as much as possible, just so we can have a open dialogue about what's going on. One day doing that, we were walking by looking at, I don't remember what they were growing. And just to the right of us is all the cover crop. And I'm like, hey, what about all these favas in here? What are you going to do with those? And so then next week we got like 20 pounds of favas from them. And then that led to the farmer saying, I've been researching these plants and you can eat the greens. And I'm like, we get one little harvest of favas here. It's not really worth it, to be honest with you. But all of a sudden we learn that we can harvest and eat the greens. And it's like, I think this is a product we should consider then. This seems way more viable, way more like it can make more money for you, make more food for people in the same amount of time.
And one of the trends we're seeing around the country is that a lot of farms are doing on-the-farm dinners where the chefs come out there and they cook at their facility. Do you do any of that kind of thing in Nashville?
I have done a little bit. And honestly, that's a lot of what kind of where I'd like to go in the future is like doing more things like that. Bring them on to the farm.
A lot of them are setting up wood-fired ovens and opening little guest houses on the farm. So it lends itself to those kind of events. They become event centers, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So, okay, well, there's always something new, right?
I guess so.
No matter how long we're in it, one final thing before we can get you out of here is that you've been around long enough now that you've had mentors. Now you're kind of in the mentoring mode yourself. There are people that are working for you who are going to go off and do great things. Are you seeing spinoffs of people who've worked for you going off, spinning off and doing things on their own?
Not a whole lot yet, but I do. There are a lot of young people out there making it happen. So hopefully soon, Yeah, I would love to see that one day. Yeah.
Well, it's inevitable because it sounds like people enjoy working with you and for you, and they're staying longer than the average. The average kid these days is working for 6 months here and 8 months there, and they're getting 12 experiences before they go out and try to do something on their own. But to be able to keep people for as many years as you have is rare and wonderful. But sooner or later, they're going to want to have a place of their own.
I hope so. We need more of that.
It'll be the tree, the city house tree of generations. So I will look forward to that as well. But before that happens, I want to get to Nashville and get it straight from your hands.
Yeah, come down. Let me make you pizza.
Oh man, I can't wait. Well, Tandy Wilson, it's been such a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much. Congratulations for all your success and for your joy. I just love the joy that you bring to your work. And I think if anything, if that's the one thing that you can transmit to the next generation is the joy and the love of what you're doing, because that's what I think people respond to the most, as well as the creativity.
Thank you, Peter. I love to hear that. I'm gonna keep it up.
All right. Well, have a great rest of the week.
You too.
And for those of you who've joined us today, thank you for being part of Pizza Quest. Join us again for another episode next week. And Tandy, we'll see you in Nashville.
Thanks so much.
Pizza Quest is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.